Hey everybody! Today, Rahdo revisits his top 10 games of 2018. And as a special bonus, I'll also be revisiting my top 10 for 2017 because I'm over a year late on that. I'm so sorry about my long delayed update. So it's going to be 2 for 1 in this video. But first of all, let's deal with 2018. We'll save 2017. You folks have waited long enough for that, but we're going to wait a little bit longer. 2018. All right. Well, it's been almost 5 months since I put my top 10 of the year up on Christmas Day, and I've got 2 changes to make to the list. A couple things have left the list, and a couple have appeared now, making room for them. And let's see. Well, how should I go with this? Well, first of all, let's talk about the 2 that have been removed and why. First one was my original number 9, Rise of Queensdale. Don't get me wrong, Queensdale is probably still in my top 20 of the year, maybe my top 30, but probably my top 20, probably high teens, because it was still a phenomenal, wonderful dice worker placement game that also happened to be a really cool legacy game full of tons of really neat, cool ideas. But I have to admit, the more I reflected on Gens in my experience, which is way in my rearview mirror, we actually got an early advance copy of the game and played through it a long time ago. It feels like a lifetime ago. Actually, over a year ago now is when I played all the way through Queensdale. But the more I thought about it, there were enough issues I had with the game that I really shouldn't have put it in the top 10. I was kind of a little overeager and overambitious. I was really only thinking about the highs, the good times we had, and not the bad times. Again, like I said, still a very high-ranked game, but the fact that unlike most legacy games, to my taste, I don't think the game really has any legs after you finish the campaign. That kind of knocks it down a little bit. I did mention this in my original video, the fact that all the really cool, neat little kind of mini games that pop up, none of them worked or seemed to me be particularly well considered for 2-player, so that kind of knocked it down a little bit. And maybe because of the way the campaign evolves, you maybe don't have as much variety from game to game as I would have otherwise liked to see. I mean, these are all minor nitpicks in what was still a really fantastic experience, but just not maybe top 10 after all. So anyway, that's dropped a few notches. The other game that I'm taking off of my original top 10 is probably going to be a little bit more, this is kind of a touchy-feely thing. It's kind of tricky. But originally, I put Pandemic Fall of Rome at my number 2 spot. And I'm removing that. I'm not removing it only from the top 10, but from the list altogether. Because, this is kind of a little bit of bookkeeping on my part. I have kind of a weird attitude towards some games that to me feel less like a new original game and more like an expansion for an existing game, and that is certainly what Pandemic Fall of Rome is. It could have been repackaged and put out as an expansion as opposed to a standalone game, and because of that, because in my mind, I do tend to quantify it more as an expansion to an existing game, I generally don't put expansions in my top 10 new original games of the year. Which is why in the previous years, I had not considered Pandemic Iberia or Pandemic Rising Tide as potential candidates. And really, I shouldn't have considered Fall of Rome either, but I had only recently played it and I was still just buzzing from it. It's so exciting because it is really, really good. But see, here's the thing. I think moving forward, we are definitely starting to see a bit of a shift in board game development and kind of almost becoming more of a Hollywood model. It is becoming so competitive on the market today. And there's still, it's a high risk thing to try and put a board game out today and be successful. I don't blame publishers for wanting to kind of adopt more of a Hollywood model of, hey, you know what? Let's just give them more of what we know they already like. Hollywood does remakes galore, does sequels galore, and with good reason. With good reason. I mean, the risks are so high. I think that's becoming more and more common in board games. And moving forward, I don't want my top 10s to start suddenly be 50, 60, 70% remakes or 2.0s or expansions that are just packaged as new standalone games because that actually makes more financial sense than a game that is functionally an expansion that was just packaged an expansion. If it's its own standalone thing, people are more likely to buy it. If it's an expansion, only people who bought the original one are going to buy it. So I mean, because this year, for 2018, if I wanted to bring all of the, quasi expansions or the repackaging of games, half of my list would have been that, because it wasn't just Pandemic Fall of Rome. There was CO2 Second Chance, which would have been in my top 10. Endeavor Age of Sail would have made my top 10. Brass Birmingham would have made my top 10. Tiny Epic Defenders Second Edition would have made my top 10. And I can see that as more and more truly masterful, wonderful, best of the best games just get repackaged with slight tweaks or changes to the formula. I don't want that to be what my top 10s of the year to be. I want my top 10s to celebrate chances and risks and truly new, different experiences. And so that's why retroactively I am striking Pandemic Fall of Rome. Don't get me wrong, it's still just as good as it was when I made the list. I just kind of forgot my own rule when I put it on the list. So those are the 2 games that have come off, which makes room for 2 new ones, which means now my list has a new number 10. And that number 10 is Selenia. Sorry, I got a cough first. And in fact, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, you can look at it for a bit while I get a drink of water. Choking on my own spit here. I should really edit more. But anyway, Selenia is phenomenal. And I have no doubt if I had played it prior to making my original list, I would have put it on the list in the first place because it's just great. Really cool, fresh, take on worker placement. It's getting harder and harder all the time to really do something interesting within the worker placement genre. It's been so done to death. I just have to sing from the mountaintops anytime somebody does something cool. Here, this was actually the 3rd game on my top 10 list for 2018 where the worker placement, the workers are actual playing cards. Because, of course, you've got now my number 8, Underwater Cities, and still my number 4, Gugong. All 3 of these games kind of approach worker placement from the same approach. Hey, workers are cards. Cards means you can have workers that are unique and special and and can change based on circumstance. That's so cool. 3 different games did it, 3 radically different ways. Selenia, though, went above and beyond because not only is the worker placement cool, but the board itself is so wonderful because it is. I was about to say it's constantly in motion. That's not the case, of course, because board games are static. They're unmoving. They're lifeless bits of cardboard. But the fact that the actual mechanisms and the actual construction of your board allows this kind of conveyor belt mechanism where you take the bottom slot of the board, put it at the top, and the rest of the board just keeps sliding down as you move through space. This is something actually we saw years ago in Battle at Kemble's Cascade. I loved it there, but I love it even more here in Solenia because it informs the gameplay so much, because this represents the passage of time as we go from day to night to day to night. And as we shift in and out of these different time frames, our objectives radically change, and it creates such a cool high level of of tension. As you know, I'm running out of time. I can see I'm running out of time because the board it's not a time track. It's not a little piece of a little meeple moving on a dial or something. It's the board itself. It's the world is changing, and that's so cool to bring time to life, to make a board that is static feel alive and moving, combined with the absolutely wonderful worker placement. And I had to put Selenia on the list, and it comes in at number 10. Now, I have to admit, I'm not quite sure where it should come in, because I still don't have a final review copy of the game. It's driving me nuts. I want to play it more. The only reason I got to play it at all was because Tiffany, the one-tar, lent me her copy. And so Jen and I got to play it a little bit. I did my video, and then I had to return it to her. I'm hoping to get a full retail, because I think this might actually come in a little bit higher than number 10, but for now, I'm just gonna, it's almost like an honorable mention. And I'm sorry, Crown of Amara fans. Oh, this would have been your chance to squeeze in. Crown of Amara is amazing, and it's still sitting at number 11, but I've got a new number 10, Selenia. And then number 9, Teotihuacan. Number 8, Underwater Cities. And I gotta say, with these two, man, it is neck and neck. I love both of these games so much. They're so incredible. I mean, they are only separated on my ranking or rank.rahdo.com by just a couple of percentage points or decimal points. Well, actually, what do I have rated as? Hold on a second here. Let's see. Control F. Teotihuacan is an 8.49. Underwater Cities is an 8.51. They are practically tied for 8th. I just got to give a shout out to both of them. They're so amazing. But anyway, number 7, Carson City, the card game. Number 6, New Frontiers. Number 5, Between Two Castles, Mad King Ludwig. Number 4, Gugong. Number 3, Forum Trajanum. And a new number 2. What's it? Pandemic Fall of Rome was my number 2. For reasons I just mentioned, it's come out. And wow, what a big jump into number 2. Alexander Pfister arrives with Blackout Hong Kong. Boom! This is a fantastic game. This is now my favorite Alexander Pfister game. Easily. And I know that is heresy to a lot of people. Obviously for most folks it's either going to be Mombasa or Great Western Trail. And I know people will have an issue. Wait a minute. This is just a reskinned Mombasa, some folks will say, because Mombasa and Blackout Hong Kong share a similar take on a very, very cool card engine building system. Which, if you want to know more about, you can go watch my run-through of Blackout Hong Kong. For me, this game... for us, it's just the perfect level of complexity with absolutely zero take that, which is what puts it above Great Western Trail for us. And I gotta say, there's a couple things that I really respect. This game goes above and beyond. One is the thing that allows this to beat out Stefan Feld. My number 3, Forum Trajanum, one of the best Felds in years, and yet I put this above it is because I love the setting. I would love to see more Euro games take chances with something like, hey, how about a citywide blackout in the modern world, and we are just, independent citizens trying to help other citizens. That theme is so well integrated into this game. Although, as I mentioned in my run-through, the rules don't do a good job of explaining how strongly the theme is integrated in, and that's a real shame, because a lot of people think it's kind of themeless, but it's not. Again, you can go check out my run-through. But anyway, I love that theme, and that really elevates it. If you ask me, what would I rather do? Vie for control over the Senate of ancient Rome, or save people in modern Hong Kong in the middle of a blackout? Of course, I'd rather do the latter. Theme is important. Theme matters, and while I have nothing against ancient Rome, I absolutely love it as a theme. It's made some of my favorite games of all time. Glory to Rome! Rome needs lumber, but still. I gotta give Blackout Hong Kong a little bit more love. The theme helps push it to the top of the list. And then there's something else too. Alexander Pfister has been experimenting with this in several of his designs, and I'm so excited. Even more so because I'm seeing other designers are now taking inspiration from him and starting to experiment as well with the notion of bringing narrative into their Euro games. Basically in the form of little mini story-driven campaigns. And now these are not a story in the same way you get from a big rollicking Ameritrage. These aren't going to compete with Eldritch Horror or something like that in terms of their storytelling verisimilitude. But, compared to the Arcaluses of our past, the fact that Blackout Hong Kong gives you a series of games you can play through that tell a story, and every time you go to another chapter, it changes the game in really interesting ways that really creates a more dynamic, interesting experience. I love that. I want to see more of that. Alexander Pfister, like I said, he's on the bleeding edge of it, but I've seen other games starting to do it too. It's fantastic, and those two elements combined, plus just the really amazing Pfister gameplay, bring Blackout Hong Kong to number 2, but they still don't eclipse my number 1, which is still Carpe Diem. Feld rules overall in the end. And that's it, folks. That is my final word. There's a few more games out there, and I'll be talking a bit more about the other games of 2018 in this month's Rahdo Rambles, which is for backers of the show only. Backers of the show, you can watch for that coming soon. But I think I'm pretty happy with this list. I've pretty much played all the big ones I need to hit. There's a few more out there, but I'm very, very confident. That's it, folks. The top 10 of 2018. And at this point, I would normally say thanks very much for watching. Have a very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye. But I did promise up front that I was going to revisit 2017 as well. So I just spent a little bit of time doing that. And imagine my surprise, imagine my chagrin when I went back and looked at my 2017 list and I found I had put Dragonfire in as my number 4 top-rated game. And after my big spiel about why I'm taking Pandemic Fall of Rome out, it made no sense at all for Dragonfire, which is basically a reskin and a a theme of my number 2 game of all time, Shadowrun Crossfire. It made no sense for that one to be in the list too. So I'm pulling that out, which means finally, for 2017, there is room for my new number 10, Spirit Island, which Jen and I finally got a chance to play, and it is just as amazing as I remember the prototype being when I did my run through a million years ago, which is what the video is of now. I haven't actually done a new video of it. Maybe I'll do that in an upcoming Rahdo Relaxes. That would be kind of cool. That would be very cool. But anyway, Spirit Island is amazing. And, I was blown away by the prototype we have. Seeing the final version of the game, the quality of the components, the little settlers and all that stuff, and just the amazing, insanely clever and innovative design of all these different, elemental spirits that we get to play as we try to protect our island from colonization from Western powers. Oh my gosh, there is just infinite replayability. My only complaint about this game, which keeps it from being higher in my retrofitted top 10 for 2017, is it is a little bit on the long side. And I do kind of wish, if we get a chance to play it more, maybe we'll get it down. But I love it. But, Jen and I were always looking for something that's a little bit less than 90 minutes, certainly, especially when it comes to co-ops. But still, the game is so good, it's going to be my new number 10, Spirit Island. And then the rest of 2017 is pretty much unchanged. Number 9 is Pulsar 2849. Number 8, Castles of Burgundy, the dice game. 7, Pandemic Legacy Season 2. And you might say, hey, why is Pandemic Legacy Season 2 on here? Well, it gets back to what I said right up front. Pandemic Legacy Season 2 is a radical, huge departure. It is barely Pandemic at all. It changes the core gameplay of Pandemic in such a radical way that I think it doesn't have to get pushed out because, hey, isn't this just kind of standing on the shoulders of a game that came before? Isn't it just like a re-theme and you slap Legacy on? No, it still stands on its own. So it'll stay there at number 7. Number 6, Charterstone. Number 5, Near and Far. Number 4, This War of Mine. Number 3, Jump Drive, because Dragonfire is gone. Number 2, Santa Maria. And still, number 1, Gloomhaven. Yeah, that wasn't going anywhere. So that's it, folks. A 2 for 1. My revisits of the top 10 of 2018 and 2017. I'll probably revisit this a little bit more in my next podcast, which you can always find at podcast.rahdo.com. If folks have anything they want to say or point out how crazy I am, this is a completely nonsensical stance I'm taking. But it is my stance, and I'm going to try and stay, well, as consistent as I can in this moving forward. And as always, folks, thanks very much for watching. Have a very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.